I went to the women's club to pick up my wife, but I was shocked when they told me she hadn't been there for weeks. Her excuse over the phone had ignited a plan for revenge that I could no longer ignore. It started with something small, barely noticeable. My wife, Elise, began spending more time at the women's club. She claimed it was her way of relaxing: yoga classes, book discussions, and social events. Seemed harmless enough, or so I thought. I trusted her. We'd been married for 7 years, and if you asked anyone, they'd say we were the perfect couple. But over the last few months, something about her behavior started to unsettle me. It wasn't just her increasing number of outings. It was the way she had become so secretive with her phone, or always had some reason to be somewhere else. I tried to dismiss it as paranoia. After all, what kind of husband goes snooping around when his wife says she's attending book club meetings? Then came the phone call that shattered everything. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing out of the ordinary. I had gotten home early from work and decided to surprise Elise by picking her up from the women's club. She had mentioned there was a guest speaker that evening, someone talking about mindfulness or self-care. I parked outside the impressive building, which looked more like a chateau than a club, and called her. "Hey, I'm outside the club. Thought I'd pick you up tonight," I said, imagining how happy she'd be. There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable silence, before her voice came through, tense and hurried. "Oh, I'm not at the club anymore. We moved to a friend's house. It's closer to town. You didn't need to come all the way out here." Something about her tone felt wrong. Elise was usually calm and collected, but now she sounded almost startled. "Which friend?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Sophie," she replied. "You don't know her. I'll grab a cab home. Don't worry," she added quickly. I don't know what made me hesitate after hanging up. Maybe it was the nervous edge in her voice, or perhaps it was because I had never heard of this Sophie before, despite all the time Elise claimed to have spent with her supposed club friends. Whatever it was, I found myself walking into the club. The receptionist greeted me with a smile. "Good evening. Are you here to pick someone up?" "Yes," I replied. "My wife, Elise. I think she just left." Her brow furrowed as she checked her computer screen. "Elise, I don't see her checked in tonight. In fact, she hasn't been here for a few weeks." The floor seemed to drop beneath me. I swallowed hard, trying to hide my shock. "Are you sure? She's been coming regularly." The receptionist offered an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, sir. She hasn't signed in for the last 3 weeks." I stood frozen, staring at the screen as if it would change and prove me wrong. But the truth was undeniable. Elise had been lying. On the drive home, my mind raced. If Elise wasn't at the club, where had she been? And why had she lied to me so blatantly? I began replaying the events of the past few weeks in my mind, carefully examining every moment I had overlooked. The late nights became clearer. Elise always had an excuse. Meetings running late, bad traffic, or her yoga class going overtime. The cryptic texts she would laugh at and refuse to share, claiming they were just club gossip, lingered in my thoughts. There was also the shift in our intimacy. We hadn't been as close recently. She seemed distracted, distant. The next morning, while Elise was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. It was surprisingly spotless. Too spotless. No suspicious messages. No questionable calls. But one thing caught my eye: frequent Uber rides to a specific address in Mantra, a town about 30 minutes away. I didn't confront Elise right then. I wanted to gather more information. Over the next week, I followed her. Yes, like some amateur investigator. Felt ridiculous, humiliating even, but I needed proof. As expected, she wasn't heading to the women's club. Her Uber rides always led to the same address, a luxury apartment building in Mantra. One night, I waited outside the building until she came out, laughing and holding hands with a man. I didn't recognize him. He was tall, well-dressed, and much younger than me. My heart shattered in that moment, but quickly, anger replaced the pain. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I chose to play the long game. If Elise wanted to live a double life, I would let her. For now, I started collecting evidence. Photos of her entering the building, screenshots of her Uber history, even a recording of her phone calls when she carelessly left her Bluetooth on at home. She had been calling him, whispering plans for weekends I thought she was spending with friends. Then, I did something I hadn't anticipated. I hired a private investigator. It was costly, but worth every penny. Within a week, I had a file thick enough to bury her in court. One evening, while Elise was likely out with him, I set my plan into motion. I sent an anonymous package to her lover's workplace, filled with photos of him and Elise together, timestamps of her visits, and a note that read, "Does your wife know about Elise?" The twist that really set me off was that he, too, was married. That information pushed me over the edge. Next, I sent a similar package to Elise's parents. They adored me, always considering me part of the family. Along with the photos, I included a heartfelt letter explaining how much I had loved Elise and how deeply her betrayal had hurt me. I made sure to highlight her lover's marital status, something I knew they would find utterly disgraceful. Finally, I filed for divorce, but not before draining half of our joint savings. I had learned from the investigator that Elise had been using our money to fund her little escapades, dinners, hotels, gifts. It only seemed fair I get my share back. When Elise came home that night, I was waiting for her. "We need to talk," I said calmly, sliding the divorce papers across the table. Her eyes quickly darted to the papers and then to the open laptop beside them, where I had all the evidence displayed. Photos, timestamps, recorded calls. The color drained from her face. "You've been following me?" she hissed, trying to take control of the situation, but her voice trembled. For the first time in years, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. I saw the cracks in her perfectly composed facade. "I trusted you, Elise," I said, my voice steady. "I built my entire life around you. And this is what you've been doing behind my back?" She didn't cry, didn't apologize. Instead, she stiffened, her face turning cold. "You'll regret this," she said, her tone icy. "If you file for divorce, I'll destroy you." Her threats loomed over us like an impending storm, but I didn't flinch. I had expected her response, and I was prepared. "Already did," I replied, sliding another document across the table. It was an official report outlining her misuse of our joint savings for personal indulgences. I had also quietly transferred most of the remaining balance into an account under my name. "That's community property," Elise spat. "You'll get what's left," I said, my voice unwavering. "But you won't touch another cent of what I've earned." Her eyes widened in shock, but before she could speak, I added, "By the way, your lover's wife knows everything. I made sure she received the same package as your parents." For the first time, her facade cracked. She looked genuinely panicked. You didn't." "Oh, I did," I said, leaning back. My voice was calm and controlled. "You wanted to live a double life, Elise? Congratulations. You've lost both." She stormed out that night, slamming the door behind her. But as I sat there in the silence of the house, I felt an emptiness. Yes, I had won, but the victory didn't feel satisfying. Felt hollow like ashes. A month later, I received a call from Margot, the wife of Elise's lover. Her voice was calm, almost chilling. "Thank you for letting me know," she said. "You've saved me years of living a lie." We talked for hours, exchanging the details of how we had both been deceived. Margot turned out to be much sharper than I had expected. By the end of our conversation, she made me an offer I couldn't refuse. The apartment Elise had been sneaking off to was actually in Margot's name. Her husband had convinced her to buy it as a family investment. But now, with the divorce in progress, Margot had full control over it. She suggested we sell it and split the profits. "Think of it as poetic justice," she said with a laugh. In the weeks that followed, I began rebuilding my life. Selling the apartment gave me the financial cushion I needed to start fresh. More importantly, it gave me a sense of closure. Elise and her lover had dug their own graves, and Margot and I made sure they'd lie in them. Do I feel good about how things turned out? Not entirely. Revenge may seem satisfying in the moment, but it doesn't erase the betrayal. Still, knowing I stood up for myself and helped another person escape a web of lies gave me a strange sense of peace. So, Reddit, I ask you again, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have walked away quietly or fought back like I did? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed the story or have one of your own to share, leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more gripping confessions.